for the production of hydrocarbons.
And in this context, we invite to our studio Sam McGill, member of the Revolutionary Communist Group from Great Britain. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for welcoming us here.
We could see in the past few days that Venezuela is not alone. Despite the intentions of the far right and all the emporiums and the mainstream medias trying to isolate Venezuela from the rest of the world, that all the opposite has happened. Not just the Venezuelan people took to the streets, but also millions of sympathizers traveled to Venezuela to accompany President Nicolás Maduro in his swearing-in ceremony. There were also official delegations from some countries that we just mentioned in the material. In your opinion, what's the importance of this international support, not just by official delegations, but also from people that is been very attentive of what is happening in Venezuela?
Yeah, I think it has been absolutely crucial that in these recent months, since September, with the opening of the anti-fascist meetings, the reunions, the Internationale, the youth and students meeting that happened in November, the parliamentary sessions that happened, and now with this anti-fascist festival that has happened over the days of the inauguration of Maduro, thousands of young people, thousands of people from over 100 different countries have come to Venezuela, and they've come to Venezuela to see the reality of Venezuela. Some people that I've spoke to didn't know very much about Venezuela before, and they're here to learn, and it is so inspiring that they are learning so many things about the reality of Venezuela, about some of the really progressive policies and programs that Venezuela has implemented, that the Bolivarian Revolution has implemented. We visited comunas, we visited women's organizations, we were in the streets with thousands of Venezuelans. All of this is really important because those people will then go back to their countries and they will tell people what the reality is, what Venezuela's reality is. So when they are encountering people in their movements or people on the streets or their media saying, oh, Venezuela is a dictatorship, there's no democracy, the people don't support Maduro, they have seen with their own eyes the truth, so they can challenge that. And of course, the people who have come back to Venezuela to participate in these congresses, it also helps to strengthen the relationships between so many different countries. It's been fantastic to be in the Congress on Thursday and today and see the multitude of different flags that are there, Not only Latin America, obviously it's very important to have the Latin America regional representation. However, also the flags from the Caribbean, also the flags from the African Sahel states. We met comrades from Niger, comrades from Burkina Faso, comrades from Mali. This is also a really important pole that is developing, this new anti-imperialist pole that is developing in West Africa with the Alliance of Sahel States. It's really important that this is recognized, and the solidarity and the trade and the connections are already developing between Venezuela and the countries of ALBA and this new anti-imperialist pole in West Africa. And of course, the participation from people from Britain, from the US, from Canada, the very countries that are sanctioning Venezuela, the very countries that are driving the imperialist agenda to try and destabilize Venezuela, to try and overthrow Nicolás Maduro, to try and get rid and crush the Bolivarian Revolution. It's very important that the people who are in solidarity with Venezuela from these imperialist countries, from these heartlands, can attend Venezuela and go back and build solidarity and really fight from inside the stomach of the monster, as we call it.
Despite the attempts of the far right of calling for violence, of this misinformation campaign that Venezuela has been a target of, nothing prevents the people from taking the streets and become this ceremony into a great joy event of people, of popular unity, of music and dancing. And I want to know your personal experience and how did you live these past days, feeling all these emotions?
I mean, for me, the focus has to be yesterday. We were on the streets of Caracas. We were outside Miraflores Palace. It was full. I mean, there were 30,000 people that I've been told, maybe even more, from Caracas who were there in the streets. We were able to walk around, we were interviewing ordinary Venezuelans who were there to support their president, who were there to support their Bolivarian revolutionary process. And the energy was just amazing. And it really is important that we, as people from Britain, from the US, from these countries, as I mentioned, that are driving the agenda against Venezuela, that we document the people on the streets and that we show it in our social media, that we show the people when we get back to our countries. Because if you look at the pages of The Guardian, this is the British newspaper that calls itself the world's leading liberal voice, yeah? They are full of lies about Venezuela, lies and manipulation. For example, there was an article a few days ago saying that Corina Machado had been kidnapped, allies say. They're always very careful to quote people, but the headline takeaway is that she's been kidnapped. Of course, this came out as false news. The next day, the article about the inauguration was that it was sparsely attended. They're talking about, the diplomatic attendance at the National Assembly, which actually, by the way, there were many diplomats from many different countries there, including the presidents of Nicaragua and Cuba. But they were talking just about the National Assembly. They did not say a single word about the 30,000 people in the streets who also took the oath, and we were there with them. We took the oath alongside Maduro, and people were singing, people were dancing, and everybody who we were speaking to was telling us, yes, Maduro is my president. I voted for Maduro. My vote must be respected. I support Maduro because of what he's doing with the communes. He's giving us participatory protagonistic democracy. I support Maduro because, due to the great housing mission of Venezuela that has provided more than 5 million units of social housing, I have a house. I support Venezuela because, every week I'm able to access food. We are receiving the clap bags several times a month. People were telling us their experience as women, their experience as children. There were children on the streets shouting, "Vamos, Nico." I said, why do you support Nicolas Maduro? And they're saying, he's my president. Because of him, I have a future in my education. I can go to university if I want to. So I think it's really important to be out on the streets with people, to share that sense of participation, to share that sense that this movement does not belong to one person. It does not belong to Nicolas Maduro. And he is the first person that says that. Precisely. He's saying that this is the people's revolutionary process. This is the people's Bolivarian revolutionary movement. And the National Assembly, the swearing in that happened yesterday, belongs to the Chavista people. And yesterday, Caracas belonged to the Chavista people. And although I wasn't there, I've seen the photographs of people mobilizing on the streets in all of the cities around Venezuela. This wasn't just about Caracas. There were hundreds of thousands of people on the streets of Venezuela yesterday supporting the inauguration of Nicolas Maduro. And so when papers like The Guardian say, that Maduro has lost the streets, or that the inauguration was sparsely populated, they are making those people invisible. They are ignoring huge sections of Venezuelan society like they don't mean anything to the media in our country. So it's important for us to fight the media war against Venezuela. This is our number one focus, and we regularly have protests outside of The Guardian. We're having one on the 15th in London this month, in a few days' time, because we have to challenge their lies. We know the lies of the right-wing media, but the problem is that The Guardian poses as a left voice. It poses as a liberal voice. And so it creates so much confusion amongst the people, people who consider themselves as left or consider themselves as, socially conscientious. It creates all this confusion. So this is why we have to challenge these newspapers, these media outlets, and we have to fight the media war. It is part of fighting the blockade against Venezuela, is fighting the media war.
Precisely, progressive movements are seeing this inauguration as a defeat for the US intentions and its allies' intentions, including the UK, to interfere in the internal affairs of Venezuela. Today, Venezuela is standing as an independent nation. However, the US insists in applying unilateral sanctions. Precisely, yesterday they announced a couple of more sanctions that are joined to a huge list of over 900 unilateral sanctions. In your opinion, what are the real interests behind these persistent attempts against the democratic path of Venezuela?
Yeah. And if we talk about sanctions, we have to talk about the British sanctions against Venezuela. They have also sanctioned 15 people. And this adds to a list of now 51 people who are sanctioned by the British government. But more than that, they have they continue to steal the gold of Venezuela. You know, there is $1.4 billion worth of gold, like hidden, stolen, hoarded in the coffers of the Bank of England. And they have refused to give back that gold. And you know, they are working hand in glove with the US and with the European Union to implement these sanctions against Venezuela. It is part of a strategy that we have seen since the coup against Chile, Allende in Chile, and obviously, you know, throughout the history of the Cuban Revolution, sanctions, economic war. This all comprises a blockade, and this blockade, it is designed to make the economy scream. And they did it in Chile. They've been doing it in Cuba. They're doing it in Venezuela. And I think it's about a couple of, I think the intentions behind it is a couple of things. Obviously, there is the oil of Venezuela. And yes, Venezuela has a lot of oil and the US wants it. Trump even said himself, if he had, you know, if he was in power, if he had, you know, if Biden didn't take the presidency in the US, we would have already got Venezuela's gold. I mean, that's what he said, yeah? Venezuela's oil. That's what he said. They were after the oil. However, I think it runs deeper than that, because I think Venezuela is a threat of a good example. Yes, it is an extraordinary and unusual threat, a threat of a good example, a threat that a different world can be built, a different world can be possible. You know, they are implementing socialist policies that are uplifting people who have been excluded for decades and decades and decades. And, you know, the Bolivarian Revolution, the 25 years that it has existed, there are so many examples of how the poor people, the working class people, the women, the children, healthcare, education, all of these things become seen as human rights. And that is made possible by by the Bolivarian Revolution and this threat of a good example. The other aspect is that Venezuela is playing a role as a leading anti-imperialist force in Latin America. You know, we have the designation of Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela as the troika of tyranny. You know, and this was, a few years ago under the Trump administration, and clearly Biden has continued with this. And Britain and the EU they are marching in lockstep with this analysis. And why are they the troika of tyranny? They are the troika of tyranny to the US because they pose this anti-imperialist threat against the US hegemony of, and imperialist power. They pose a threat against British imperialism, against EU imperialism, and because they are mobilizing with the global South. They are organizing South-South trade. They are organizing systems like CELAC, like ALBA, which are built on mutual support, mutual development, on principles of supporting their region to organize the infrastructure in a different way, to develop trade in a different way, so that the focus of this project becomes it becomes people instead of profit, and this is what they are fighting against.
Thank you very much, Sam, for joining us today. Thank you. We are very pleased to have you here and also to analyze on all these events so paramount, not just for the region, as you mentioned, but also for the world and also for the left of the world. And as you mentioned, Venezuela has become the epicenter of the struggle of the left movement worldwide. And thank you very much for your remarks on this day.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. We were joined by Sam McGill, a member of the Revolutionary Communist Group of Great Britain. And with that, we conclude with this special program, Venezuela Decides 2025, marking the start of a new era for the Bolivarian Revolution, with President Maduro leading the way. This new era that promises greater transformations, political consensus, and peace achieved by the people, for the people, and with the people. I'm your host, Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.